wealth is something that needs to be shared. Giving money is fundamentally very personal, very emotional, in some cases, experience. For me, philanthropy is just the use of your resources, whether that's your money, your time, your talents, to create a better world. Hi, I'm Emily Collins-Ellis. I'm Managing Director of a firm called IG Advisors. We're a strategy consultancy that works with philanthropists, businesses and non-profits on creating social and environmental change. And I'm here talking with Citywealth today about philanthropy, which is the potential of what you can achieve with great wealth. There's not really such a thing as a typical philanthropy client or a family philanthropy client. As we know, all of our families are weird and wonderful in their own unique ways, but there are a few kind of common scenarios that we see with our clients. The first is kind of recent inheritors, usually who've come by their wealth through bereavement, which obviously brings a lot of difficult emotions with it. Another is multi-generational wealth, so families who've been giving for generations and perhaps want to evolve how they're working together or do something different. And then the final one is the families who have lived through the wealth creation. So usually that's kind of an entrepreneurial family who may be wanting to involve their children in giving back for the first time. But it all kind of really varies across different families. One of the most common things we see from our clients is a desire to involve their children in giving or to pass on the kind of family tradition of giving to the next generation. And in some cases, as I said, entrepreneurial families wanting to instill a culture of giving in their family for the very first time. And that's a very personal process. It's a lot about instilling values that you want in your children. It's a lot about teaching your children new skills, and in many cases adult children who have their own kind of careers and interests as well, so involving them and empowering them within the family conversations, on the board of the family foundation. However structured or unstructured it is, it's about really bringing them into the kind of practice, the practical practice of philanthropy, but also the ethos of it. And so what we do a lot of the time is help families to all come to the table and share their specific interests, their specific priorities, again, the world that they want to create, but also talk about what they'd like to bring to the table in terms of their professional skills, their academic interests, and try to find a way for the family's philanthropy to be something that they can collaborate on together, and also the areas that they can take individual charge of so that they can push forward with their particular priorities themselves. Every philanthropy journey needs to start with a little bit of introspection, a little bit of open-mindedness, thinking about what you're looking to get out of the process personally, how much you can commit, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time and attention, and also a little bit of learning, because people bring different levels of knowledge to their philanthropy. Some people have been doing it for years and they want to push the boundaries of that. Other people have never worked with nonprofits before and don't have a sense of how movements for change work and how they can be effective. Every successful philanthropy journey really requires a clear strategy, a clear plan, and that plan needs to be something that can be communicated to others in a relatively simple way. So the evidence, the research, the personal reasons that sit underneath that strategy can be as complex or robust as you like, but you need to be able to explain to the people you're funding, the lawyers who are supporting you, the wealth managers with whom you're talking about your philanthropy. You need to be able to share with people in a simple and concise way what it is you're looking to do, and also how you'll know if you've succeeded. When a family first comes to IG Advisors for philanthropy advice, we usually start with a free consultation session. Sometimes that's with the family member that's doing the work of finding the right advisor for them. Other times it's with the whole extended family. So that session is usually about really understanding where they're coming from, what their experiences are, what kind of help they need, and where they are already on their journey. And after that initial consultation session, we usually put together a proposal for how we feel that we can help them. Sometimes that's relatively light touch, maybe a little bit of advice, a little bit of support. Sometimes it's quite comprehensive and supporting them to make their plans a reality. Sometimes people worry when they come to that initial consultation that they need to be ready with ideas, plans, or all the answers, but it's our job at IG to ask the right questions, to poke and prod and kind of guide people through that introspective process and kind of come up with potential solutions for how we might help. So there's no preparation needed for that initial phase. There's no typical way we work with clients. It's all very bespoke and tailored to what each family or individual needs. But one of the most common approaches we take is a series of workshops. The reason we work in workshop format with our clients, really we call them workshops, but they're just kind of discussions, meetings. It's just getting round a table or around a Zoom room in some cases, and talking about the big questions, challenges, and opportunities of their philanthropy. Giving money is fundamentally very personal, very emotional in some cases, experience. Some people are trying to live up to the legacy of their family. Other people are trying to contextualize their role in trying to create a better world. And that's not just a simple scientific process, that's a very personal process. So the purpose of the workshops are to talk through some of those bigger questions, explore what it is people are looking for, create a safe space for people to talk about things that might be a bit difficult, particularly in family dynamics or in what their wealth means to them, but also space to kind of hope and think about what kind of world they'd like to create. You know, if they had all the money in the world, what kind of world would they like to create? And then we can kind of help them to bring that back down to the practical reality of what's possible within. One recent project that I'm very proud of is our work with two sisters who'd both lost their parents very young. They were obviously dealing with bereavement in a number of ways and the wealth management needs that come with that. When they came to us, they were really looking to honour the legacy of their parents, and we worked with them to really understand what that meant. It was a sense of needing to give the money in a way that their parents would have liked, but also to do something that their parents would have been proud of as well. So it was a real kind of tension between those two very human needs within a family. And so what I'm most proud of is working with them to not only find specific ways of giving that honoured their parents' legacy, but also empowering them to be that kind of next generation of what it meant to be a part of their family, and also to work through their grief and do something that really felt like they were keeping the spirit of their family alive in what they were doing. It's obviously a very personal and very emotional process, and it's a real privilege to walk alongside people as they're doing that. Another project I'm really proud of is an initiative that IG has incubated, which is called the MESA. We developed this project in partnership with a large foundation who wanted to understand how technology could impact philanthropy. And we went into the project planning for technology to revolutionize the practice of giving, which it is, but actually what we ended up focusing on is the need for philanthropists to connect with each other and find community in their giving, because actually being a wealth holder, being a philanthropist can sometimes feel quite lonely. Sometimes you feel like you're starting from scratch and you're not sure where to begin. And so the MESA is about forming community within the philanthropy space. And I'm really, really proud of what we've managed to achieve in trying to innovate that space and give people what they need to give more and give better. One huge milestone achievement of one of our recent clients is during the pandemic, when early days in the UK particularly, there was a government approach of trying to reach herd immunity, and particularly controversial at the time. But one of the reasons that it became most controversial and the government pivoted away was this landmark piece of research by a UK institution that showed that that would have resulted in a significant number of deaths. our client was a key funder of that research process, and a lot of the pre-work that had gone into their role funding the health and pandemic research space meant that their team was really well positioned to immediately respond to the pandemic. And so it was a huge milestone achievement for them, not just being ready for disaster, but specifically playing a huge role in averting disaster as well. Climate receives less than 2% of philanthropic funding globally. It makes all other types of philanthropy irrelevant, because if our planet becomes inhospitable, then nothing else will matter. It's something that's obviously getting a lot more attention now, but the practice of actually philanthropically funding it feels quite overwhelming for people. And so sometimes we like to support people to see that as part of their overall giving portfolio, something that really needs to underpin everything else. And the other major area that is becoming more popular, but is again a little bit tricky to get into, it's a little bit hard for people to see how they can get into the space, is just social justice and inequality. They're such big topics. They permeate every other issue that our clients are caring about. But it can feel hard to understand how philanthropy can play a role. So those are the areas where we don't see enough funding going there, but we also recognize that people need strategic support to know how to achieve impact in those spaces. Some clients come to us with quite specific or unusual requests. The most common one we get is from quite high-profile clients who want to be completely anonymous in their philanthropy, which is always interesting for us because we're helping them to achieve kind of vast impact whilst also ensuring that nobody knows that it's them doing it. So it's kind of a creative exercise in shifting resources whilst also, not getting any kind of egos or profiles or reputation involved. And the other thing we get quite often is really, really ambitious goals. So we had one client come to us who had a family history of a specific disease. They had a certain amount of resource, and they came to us with the ambition of solving that disease. Full stop. Wanted to end that disease, and we don't shy away from a challenge. But one thing that we worked with them on very carefully is understanding how they could leverage what they had, time and resources and their networks, to bring others to the table, to collaborate, to achieve the goals that they had. So they haven't yet ended the disease completely, but what we did was build a task force with them of people from different fields, different sectors that all wanted to focus on this specific issue. And they have since received other funding from other foundations towards that goal. So they're able to leverage what they had to really make great strides towards ending that disease. Philanthropy's always been changing throughout history, but it does feel like the pace of change has sped up recently. The main shifts that we're seeing with our philanthropy clients and across the landscape in general is a shift from being less transactional to more transformational. And by that I mean less kind of write a check, get your name on a building kind of transaction in that sense, and more about trying to create change, trying to create progress. And related to that is a shift from solely focusing on the symptoms of social issues, so for example providing shelter for the homeless, providing food for the hungry, towards thinking about the root causes of those issues, so bringing a more strategic, sophisticated view of why those social issues might be occurring, and trying to address those root causes. There's also a lot of movements for change within philanthropy. So a couple of examples is Resource Justice, which is a community of people with wealth and class privilege who are working to end wealth inequality and to pursue the more equitable distribution of resource. And there's also writers like Edgar Villanueva who uses indigenous framing of money as medicine, something that can be toxic if used inappropriately, but also can be healing if used well. So there's a lot of different ways of thinking about money that are quite philosophical, quite profound, but also a shift towards really understanding wealth as something that needs to be shared, and also inequality as a function of wealth, and that being something that people are bringing into their philanthropy and their investments as well, just thinking more holistically about how wealth can be used for good. The principles of giving more are ethically and pragmatically smart. So ethically, it's very clear that giving philanthropically will do less harm and it will do more good in the world. But sadly, only 50% of multimillionaires in the UK give more than 1% of their income charitably. So there's a huge opportunity there for individuals to give more and for that to achieve more impact for them as a person or as a family, but also just as a whole country, as a whole world, for the greater giving potential to move the needle on pressing social and environmental issues. But it also just pragmatically makes sense. The world is a difficult place to live for everybody when there is suffering. Obviously, we also need the environment to remain sustainable and hospitable to human life. So the role of philanthropy, the responsibility of those who can give philanthropically to help make the world a better place for everyone, including themselves, just makes sense. It's just a smart thing to do. Giving money is obviously a good thing to be doing, but there are better and worse ways to do that. So the practice of philanthropy can be very profoundly impactful. It can also in some cases be harmful. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the history of philanthropy and the mistakes that people have made in the past in terms of how people approach the charitable partners they're working with, in terms of the issues that people choose to prioritize or deprioritize. There's also a lot of opportunity to learn from really excellent practice and innovations that are currently happening in philanthropy. So giving better is really about helping people to contextualize their individual role, their individual wealth in the world and the role that they can play, but also contextualize philanthropy as a whole and the opportunity to take more risks than other types of funders can, to move more quickly than other types of funders can, and to fund issues that other types of funders would historically have disregarded. So the role and the power of philanthropy is something that giving better means really harnessing that and leveraging that opportunity. That is why we say it's important to give more and to give better, and it's also why our mission as a firm is to fix the flow of resources for good. My advice to any philanthropist is that good philanthropy is just doing the best you can with what you've got. There's no perfect or right answer. There's just an array of good, an array of bad options. So the key to doing the best you can is the most human of qualities: curiosity, empathy, and connection. And if you approach your giving with that ethos, then you'll be on the right track.